Greetings, chess friends. We are going to look at today a peculiar situation. I think if you're watching this, you probably saw some of the 2024 candidates, and that was really a youth versus experience event, youth winning out, and really kind of felt like a different type of event with all the young players playing such exciting, enterprising openings, uncompromising. Maybe the talk of the tournament, the 2024 candidates, was the Pragg F5, at least in terms of opening prep. I heard there were podcasts on this, some videos made, everybody really talking about this. How could you play this? And the candidates, no less, especially when it occurred, but even after the tournament, this was really much talked about. Interesting move, for sure. He goes on to win this round 3 clash. And remember, Pragg had actually lost round 2. So he was in a hole, played something really dynamic, exciting, almost accepting a worse position, but the psychological shake-up, the surprise factor, worked in his favor. Tremendous. We're going to go back in chess history now about 35 years, well before either of these players were born, especially Pragg. But here to the 1989 candidates match. And this one was between Jan Timman of the Netherlands and John Speelman of England. And actually, Timman was ahead by 1 game with 2 games left. 2 games remain in this match. Winner goes on to play Karpov to play the World Championship against Kasparov. That's what's at stake here. Basically, the final match until you get to Karpov, kind of those two, Kasparov, Karpov, dominated this era. Let's see what happened. Here, Black needs to win one of these next 2 games. Of course, you'll be white in the last game. Okay, typical Rui F5. F5. And Speelman, very interesting grandmaster, very strong player. Had kind of this peculiar image, the mad scientist, so to speak. Still does quite a bit of writing, I believe now, an author and a very strong player, Olympian, grandmaster, top 5 or 10 in the world. So exciting stuff, certainly not just throwing this move out there. And Timman responds knight c3. This is, again, a calculated risk, let's call it. Not an opening you're going to play every game with Black, certainly not. But if you trot this out one time in a key moment and it works, it's really like the surprise onside kick for those Americans, football fans. So here we go. A really dynamic game. D5. And the knight is hanging. The central pawns look good. White totally ignores it. Gives the knight with the intention now taking this knight if pawn were to take, bishop takes, and that is a check, and the rook. And just a whole mess. I will mention you really need to keep count of material in these type of tactical battles where there's many variations, many captures. You need an accurate material count. Queen g5, and this had all been played before. So even as a surprise weapon, probably, I don't know the time taken or kind of the sentiment after the game if Timman White knew this, but I had seen actually there was a game with Magnus played in 2010 that went like this and even further and further. So let's see. Queen e2. That bishop now was under attack from the black queen, discarded. Knight f6. I'm not grabbing this pawn. f4. If this game wasn't already a tidal wave, notice there's a discovered attack possible. Any knight move here would be a check and looking to grab as much material as you can. Looks like some players here played knight a7. Check. And again, notice bishop d7, probably the best move. You cannot play here. We just jump back and take it. So kind of a funny knight c6, knight a7, knight back to c6. Certainly none of that happened in this game, high level. f4 was the real game. Takes. Notice en passant here is not possible. Some people don't know that move as it is, but it is not allowed here because that pawn is pinned. f4, queen takes f4, knight e5. That's a discovered check. That knight cannot be touched. c6, again, Magnus game following for another 7 moves. There was a game Magnus versus Dieter from Germany. Okay, d4, another en passant possibility, but notice the queen is actually under attack here. Queen h4, g3 blocks the check. Queen h3, preventing white from castling, invading there, and just bishop simply drops back. Let's take a pause for a moment and count the material. Because after all these complications, you really need to know the score. White has, let's see, 6 pawns. Black has 6 pawns. We're equal in material after all that. So really exciting. 3 minor pieces each. Bishop e6. The queen is guarding that. White's bishop is also guarded here by knight and queen. So white just plays another developing move. Castle's long. Castle's long. You don't see that too often. Consecutive queenside castles. Bishop d6. All very natural developing moves. And here is where the Magnus game diverges. This game, we're going to see white played knight f7. Magnus played the top engine move, which is rook h to f1. So again, combined with the Pragg game surprise of the tournament there, and it just really is a nice lesson and conversation about computers' influence over the years. Again, this game was 35 years ago, Magnus even now 14 years ago, and the game from the Candidates 2024 just a month ago. Knight f7 was played in this game. Bishop takes. Don't know why you get an exclamation point for that. Bishop takes. And white kind of retains a tiny, tiny edge according to this computer, but completely black's risk has paid off, let's say. Black has achieved a good position. Not great, but good, balanced, with some fighting chances. Bishop c4, rook d e8 in a good way for black. Pushing and pushing, that could be a strong pass pawn. d5. Really trying to instigate around the king. c5. Rook f1. King b8, a useful move. If you castle queenside, this is a good inclusion sometimes. If you're feeling a little breeze around your king, just slide it over one. Sometimes you can use the c-file with that rook. Looks more like your traditional kingside castle. Bishop f4, kind of forcing a trade of bishops here as the king is now in line with all this. And then white jumps back. So you can imagine, again, I don't have any insight or these games, if they're filmed back then, I don't know where it is, but you can imagine white may be a little shaken. Not only was the opening surprise, but this move back and forth really doesn't inspire. And black still kind of pressing. I mean, a6 is one of those moves that's really pesky, right? You start thinking, oh, geez, are they really going to play here? Maybe the black king is not even in as much danger as it might appear, because the queen can always come back to help the king. So you start really maybe seeing some ghosts, these pawns marching. Bishop f6, g takes f6. Maybe a surprise, but a good move. You can imagine this supporting one day. Maybe bishop e5. We do have, by the way, an opposite color bishops game. There's still the major pieces on the board, but opposite color bishops tends to favor the attacker. In other words, tactics can come out of nowhere. All of a sudden, the dark squares are very vulnerable. Hint, hint. And tactics can just show up. So queen h2, rook h1. Probably this is where the game really goes completely wrong for white. Bishop, remember, f4 and back, and then taking a strange turn of events, and then this blunder. Really, the best move here was probably g4. And you can imagine some position looking, let's say, queen f5, just kind of using the engine as a guide here, but roughly equal. Opposite color bishops give you that equality usually. Rook h1 is possible, you can see. So in the real game, white, Timman played rook h1, assuming, of course, queen is going to take, rook is going to take, and he must have really misevaluated, misjudged this position. Very easy for a player of this caliber, and I want to just reiterate that both of these guys were top 10 in the world. So if you want to try to equate that to somebody, Wesley So or Ali Reza or Anish Giri, that are very, very strong players. The ratings, you see both over 2,600. That was not common back then. Top 10 in the world. And of course, there were only 2 players over 2,700, Kasparov and Karpov, of course. Rook fe8, activating the rook, and here, the blunder. The complete blunder, queen f5, after, again, that bishop shuffle, the misjudging this position, black was a little bit better, and then this completely goes. So a good lesson here, and the arrow is indicating maybe queen h4 could have held on a little better. White, still worse if exactly queen f3 is played. Not a hard move to find, though, as the idea is similar to the game. Bishop f4 check is a really, really strong threat. black is probably still winning. But queen f5, let's see why this totally throws the game away. b5. And then here, rook d1. Let's see here, other moves possible, just rook e1 right away. Maybe rook h1, rook e8. Yeah, that is possible. So I'm not sure why b5 was required, but gets an exclamation point as a good move. Queen f6 here, possible. But bishop f1 was played in the game. Rook e1, again, major threat here is actually queen or bishop to f4 check. That would force the king to slide over. And then the rook hanging. So major threat. This move guards the queen, but just hangs a piece. Check. King b1, queen f1. White resigns. White resigns. A stunning finish to this game, which was really just equal. Let's see. This game is over on move 30. Candidates game over. Move 30 was really just equal right around here. 7 moves ago. Here. Queen takes e4. 24th move, and it's over by move 30. This, I can't state enough how intense this was, equals the match with 1 game to go. 1 game left. I'll leave you in suspense. Some of you may know, but maybe we'll do another video on that. But this really, he had to win one of these last 2 games, and he just wins with black, with the shocking here, f5 on move 3, Speelman attack. And again, maybe, I don't know, but maybe a little inspiration for the real prodigy here, Pragnanda from India. So really, I can't say enough about how much I enjoyed that, Candidates. I think that's really what everyone's been talking about. So again, I promise not to cover any current events in chess. You can find that at all the other channels. So we won't go any further, but great stuff. Really enjoyed. And I certainly like to go dig through chess history. So if you like that type of thing, these type of stories, definitely send a message, subscribe, like, appreciate it.